The horn didn't fade the way a siren fades. It held. It rolled through the air like something huge was exhaling right over the roof, and the cafeteria turned into a box of vibrating objects. The papers taped over the windows quivered. The trophies in the case rattled against their little metal stands. Even the gym mats under us trembled like we were lying on a drum. Mr. Haskins kept his head down, eyes on the floor, and still flinched like the sound had hands. The second blast hit a few minutes later. Longer, lower, the kind of note you feel in your teeth. It made my stomach do that empty drop like an elevator stopping too hard. Jaden whispered, "Is that outside?" Mr. Haskins didn't answer right away. He was listening the way you listen to a parent arguing on the other side of a wall, like the tone mattered more than the words. "It's above," he finally said, voice rough. "And it wants us thinking about above." Tyler sat with his back to the stage, eyes fixed on the floor. "So it's bait." Eli, sitting a little apart with his hood up, breathed out a quiet laugh that wasn't funny. "Everything is bait." Nina had Mia pulled in close. Mia's breathing was shallow and fast, like she was trying to sip air through a straw. Her hoodie was cinched so tight around that darkened spot on her shoulder that her knuckles were white. Mr. Haskins looked at the spot, and then looked away like staring would make it worse. "Water," he said softly. "Small sips, then we decide." "Decide what?" Tyler asked, and the edge in his voice made it obvious he'd been holding it down for hours, and it kept slipping through. Mr. Haskins took a breath, slow, controlled. "How long we can keep this room hours?" "That's the first floor," Nina whispered. "The windows are... it's a lot. It's also the only place we've got mats, food, and a barricade," Mr. Haskins said. "We're not wandering." Eli hummed under his breath again, a single note, steady, like he was matching the building's pulse. Jaden's eyes kept flicking towards the kitchen doors, like he expected something to glide out, polite and calm, saying his name. Nobody moved for a while. The horn didn't come again, but it left a pressure behind, like the air had been compressed and wasn't done expanding. We sat there in the dim cafeteria, listening to the building settle. That's when I noticed the smell. It was under everything at first. Under sweat, under old food, under the lemon cleaner that seemed fused into the school's bones. It smelled like a wet band-aid, like when you peel gauze off too late and it's warm and sour. I thought it was my imagination. Then Tyler shifted and his face tightened. "You guys smell that?" Nina nodded without looking up. "Yeah." Mr. Haskins sniffed once, cautious like even inhaling could be a mistake. His eyes moved towards the windows, then toward the ceiling, then toward the stage curtains. "Kitchen," he said. We moved in a tight cluster. No one wanted to be the person crossing the open floor alone. The cafeteria felt too wide, even with our barricades. I kept my eyes on the scuff marks and dried stains on the linoleum, on the little metal bolts in the table legs, on anything that wasn't the windows. In the kitchen, the smell was stronger. It wasn't coming from the sink. It wasn't grease. It wasn't the trash. It was coming from the wall. A section of painted cinder block near the freezer door looked wrong. The paint had bubbled outward like it had been heated from behind. Tiny cracks spidered across it, and in those cracks, there was a damp shine, almost clear, like condensation, except it clung in strings instead of droplets. Jaden leaned in for a fraction, then stopped himself like he'd been burned. "What is that?" Tyler's voice went quiet, which meant he was scared. "Mold?" Mia made a small sound and pressed her fingers to her mouth. Eli stepped closer than any of us. He didn't touch it. He just stood near it, head angled slightly, like he could hear it if he listened hard enough. "Skin," he murmured. Mr. Haskins snapped. Back! Eli rocked back on his heels like he'd been told not to step on a wet floor. It's not a guess, he said. Mr. Haskins stared at the wall, jaw clenched. Nobody touches it. We backed away, but the smell followed. It was in the air now, and once your brain caught it, it kept pulling at you like a loose thread. Back in the cafeteria, I noticed more. The trophy case glass had fogged in the bottom corners, as if the air near the floor was warmer than the air higher up. The tape on the window papers had started to peel at the edges in slow curls. The cafeteria doors had faint, damp streaks down the middle, like something had leaned against them with a wet shoulder. It wasn't the school getting dirty. It was the school getting soft. Mr. Haskins gathered us back at the mats. He kept his voice low and even, like he was teaching a lesson with a gun pressed to his back. Listen, he said. We're going to treat the building like it's changing, because it is. Tyler swallowed. Like shifting halls? Like everything, Mr. Haskins said. We don't assume a route is the same route. We don't assume a door leads where it led yesterday. And we don't assume surfaces are safe to lean on. Nina nodded slowly. She looked like she hadn't blinked enough in a week, even though it'd been days. So what do we do? Mr. Haskins stared at the floor for a second, and I could see him making himself not fall apart. We stay here, he said. We reinforce more. We map what we can without wandering. We keep watch. If we have to move, we move with a plan, not in a panic. Jaden's laugh came out too sharp. Map with what? Our dead phones? Mr. Haskins didn't take the bait. Paper, markers, our eyes. We note landmarks that don't change. Eli murmured, landmarks are the first thing that changes. Tyler snapped. Dude, do you ever shut up? Eli smiled faintly. You'll miss me when I do. Mr. Haskins' voice hardened. Eli, enough. Eli's humming stopped. He stared at the floor, lips still moving like he was listening to a song we couldn't hear. We spent the next chunk of time doing chores, because chores keep you from thinking about dying. Tyler and I added more tables to the cafeteria door barricade and wedged chair legs under the handles like crude braces. Jaden and Nina reorganized food in the kitchen into piles. Stuff that would last, stuff that would go stale, stuff nobody wanted but would eat anyway if it came down to it. Mr. Haskins tore butcher paper into strips and taped the gaps in the window coverings again, overlapping layers. Mia sat on a mat, knees hugged, watching her shoulder like she expected it to open. Every once in a while, the building made a sound that didn't fit. A slow pop like glue separating. A faint squelch like a shoe stepping in something wet, except nobody was moving. A soft click from above, like a ceiling tile shifting without permission. Each time, we froze. Each time, nothing came through. That was the torture part. The waiting that didn't pay out. The fear that never got to finish. By midday, the cafeteria smelled like damp paper and human breath, and that wet Band-Aid stink that kept getting stronger. Mr. Haskins tried to ignore it until he couldn't. He led us back into the kitchen and pointed with the yardstick. The wall patch had grown, not by a foot, not by some obvious horror movie amount, by inches. The bubbled paint had split in two places, and underneath wasn't cinder block anymore. It was pale and slick, like the underside of a tongue. Veins of darker pink ran through it, faint as pencil lines. It pulsed once, subtle enough I almost convinced myself it was my eyes twitching. Tyler whispered, "No." Jaden's voice cracked. "That moved." Mr. Haskins' face went tight. "Nobody touches it," he repeated, and this time, it sounded like a prayer. Mia whispered, "It's inside the walls." Nina, eyes locked on the floor, said, "Or the walls are inside it." Nobody had an answer for that. We backed out of the kitchen, and when we did,
we found the first clear proof the structure was changing in a way we couldn't control. The cafeteria doors. The double doors that led into the main hall were no longer sitting straight in their frame. They had sagged inward at the top, like the metal had softened. The gap along the side was uneven now, and the rubber seal at the bottom had bulged outward like a lip. Tyler grabbed the edge of a table and shoved it tighter against the doors, hard. The doors flexed slightly under pressure, then returned, like pushing on a mattress. Tyler's breathing sped up. That's not... Doors don't... Mr. Haskins stepped closer, yardstick ready like he could fight a door. He crouched and looked at the bottom gap. Something wet gleamed there. A thin line of shine, like saliva. He leaned back quickly. Okay, he said, and his voice went thin. Okay, we're not using these doors unless we have to. Jaden swallowed. What if we have to? Mr. Haskins stared at the floor like it was safer than looking at the truth. Then we go out the kitchen service hall. Smaller, less open. We can barricade behind us. Eli whispered. Smaller is easier to feed. Mr. Haskins snapped. Eli, stop. Eli's mouth twitched. I'm stopping, he murmured, and went quiet, which somehow made it worse. We tried to rest, because bodies don't run forever. I dozed sitting up, head against the mat, and woke to Nina whispering my name. Ben. I opened my eyes and kept them low. Nina's face was tight. Listen, she whispered. Do you feel warm? I swallowed. Like sick warm? She shook her head. Like the building, like the floor. I pressed my palm down on the linoleum. It was warmer than it should have been. Not sun-warmed, under-warmed, like heat coming up from below. Tyler noticed too. He sat up, his face shiny with sweat. Why is it hot? He whispered. Mr. Haskins looked exhausted. Because it's alive, Eli whispered, like he couldn't help himself. Mr. Haskins didn't argue. He just stared at the floor, and that silence was worse than any answer. That's the moment I realized we weren't just hiding in a school during a disaster. We were trapped inside something that had started to claim the shape of a school. Later, Mr. Haskins made us do something that felt insane and necessary at the same time. He took butcher paper and taped it to the cafeteria wall near the stage and wrote at the top in thick marker, "Rules we know." It was blunt. It was human. It made my throat tighten. Under it, he wrote in plain block letters, "Do not look out windows. Do not look up. Do not answer voices. Stay together. Move quiet. Watch for marks." He capped the marker and looked at us like he expected someone to laugh. Nobody did. "Add," he said. Tyler stared at the list, then said, "The halls stretch." Mr. Haskins added, "Halls change." Nina swallowed. "The walls grow." Mr. Haskins hesitated, then wrote, "Surfaces change." Jaden said, "Sound matters." Mr. Haskins wrote, "Sound draws attention." Mia, voice small, said, "They can tag you." Mr. Haskins added, "Touch can mark." Eli said nothing, but his eyes were on the list like he was reading something familiar. We were halfway through the day when Caleb's absence finally stopped being a shock and started being a gap he had to step around. Like Seth, like Olivia, like there was a growing pile of missing that we didn't have the energy to mourn properly. That was when the new person broke. It wasn't Eli. Eli had been breaking in slow motion since the first day. It was Mason. Mason had been quiet since the beginning. Sophomore, lanky, always looked like he was trying to fold himself smaller. He'd said maybe 10 words in 2 days, and most of them had been questions he didn't finish. He'd been sitting near the stage with his back against the wall, head down, hands clasped so tight his fingers were pale. I noticed him because his breathing changed. It went shallow, then stopped for a second like he'd forgotten to inhale. Then his head lifted. Not high, just enough that I saw his eyes. The whites had that oily sheen, thin film over water, shimmering in the dim. Nina's hand shot out toward him, then froze midair like touching him might infect her. "Mason," she whispered. Mason's mouth opened, and at first I thought he was going to cry. Then he screamed. It wasn't a kid's scream. It was a man's scream. Full chest. Raw. The sound tore out of him and bounced off the cafeteria walls like a thrown brick. He stood up so fast, his knees cracked against the floor. His eyes weren't looking at us. They were looking through us. His head tilted slightly as if someone above him had tugged a string. He screamed again, and this time words came out with it, loud and shaking, like a quote ripped from inside his skull. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The cafeteria went dead still. My stomach clenched hard. That sentence didn't belong in Mason's mouth. It belonged in a church, a Bible, a story about someone pretending they didn't know what they'd done. Mason's head snapped towards Jaden. Jaden flinched back. "Bro, Mason, stop." Mason moved. Fast. Too fast for a kid who'd been sitting still for days. He crossed the mats in 3 strides and slammed into Jaden like a tackling dummy. Jaden hit the floor hard, breath blasting out of him. Tyler lunged forward on instinct, but Mr. Haskins grabbed his shoulder and yanked him back like he knew something we didn't. "Mason!" Mr. Haskins shouted, voice cracking. "Stop!" Mason didn't. He got his hands on Jaden's throat and squeezed. Jaden's face went red instantly. His legs kicked. His hands clawed at Mason's wrists. Nina screamed, "Haskins!" Mr. Haskins moved then. He swung the yardstick down across Mason's forearms. Mason didn't even react like it hurt. He leaned closer to Jaden, eyes shimmering like oil and light, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Jaden made a choking sound that turned wet. His hands slowed. His feet kicked once, then twice, weaker. Tyler surged forward and grabbed Mason from behind, trying to pull him off. Mason jerked his head back and slammed it into Tyler's face without looking. Tyler stumbled, hands flying to his nose, blood immediately pouring between his fingers. Nina grabbed Mia and dragged her back like she was trying to keep Mia from being seen. Mr. Haskins hit Mason again, harder. Mason finally shifted his attention, and it was like watching a dog turn toward a sound. He looked at Mr. Haskins with that wet shimmer in his eyes and smiled. Not Mason's smile. Then Mason did something that froze my blood. He let go of Jaden. Jaden lay still, eyes open, mouth parted, chest not moving. Mason stood over him for half a second, like he was admiring work. Then his hands went to his own neck. He twisted, hard. The snap was clear, loud, like cracking a chicken bone. Mason's body dropped straight down, limp, hitting the mat with a soft, heavy thud. Silence hit us so hard it felt physical. Nina made a small broken noise in her throat, then covered her mouth with both hands and started crying. Mia started rocking, eyes huge, staring at the floor like the floor was the only thing keeping her from floating away. Tyler stood swaying with blood on his hands, nostrils flaring, eyes wide like he wanted to vomit and punch something at the same time. Mr. Haskins froze over Mason's body, yardstick still raised, chest heaving. I couldn't make my brain understand the sequence. Attack, kill, self-snap. Like something had used Mason and then discarded him. Eli whispered very softly, "Picking puppet." Mr. Haskin turned on him like he might actually swing the yardstick at Eli this time. His face was wet again, tears mixing with sweat. "Shut up," he said, his voice shaking. "Shut up." Eli's smile didn't come. His eyes stayed low. "I'm not talking to you," he murmured. Mr. Haskins dropped to his knees beside Jaden. He didn't look at Jaden's face. He looked at Jaden's chest, like he could force it to rise by staring. "Ben," he said, voice thin. "Help me." My legs moved even though my brain was still stuck. I knelt on the other side. My hands shook so hard I had to pin them to my own thighs. Mr. Haskins checked Jaden's neck. He pressed 2 fingers, then more, searching. His mouth moved like he was counting silently. He looked up at me, and the teacher mask was gone. It was just a man in a bad building with kids dying around him. "He's gone," he whispered. Nina made a sharp sound like she'd been punched. Tyler whispered, "No, no, no, no." Mia's breathing went fast and shallow again, like she was going to spiral. Mr. Haskins closed his eyes for 1 second, then opened them and became the adult again by force. "Okay," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. "Okay." We move them away. We keep our eyes down. We do not fall apart. He didn't say don't engage. He didn't have to. We dragged Mason's body first because he was closer. Tyler grabbed the ankles with shaking hands. I grabbed under the arms. Mason's head lolled in a way that made me want to gag. His neck looked wrong. Too loose. Too final. We moved him into the far corner by the stage where the curtains hung. We set him down gently, like gentleness mattered. Then we moved Jaden. Jaden was heavier than he should have been. Or maybe grief made him heavy. Mr. Haskins insisted we put Jaden near Mason, away from the main mat area. He didn't want us stepping over bodies every time we moved. Nina sat with her back against the wall, knees hugged, eyes locked on the floor so hard I thought she'd burn a hole in it. Mia whispered, "He killed him." Tyler's voice was raw. "Mason killed him." Eli's voice was calm, almost bored. Mason was used. Mr. Haskins snapped, "Enough." He stood and walked to the rules we know paper and stared at it like it might tell him what to do next. He added a new line, hand shaking as he wrote, "People can be turned." Then he stood for a second, marker still in his hand, shoulders shaking slightly like his body wanted to collapse and he wouldn't allow it. After Mason, the cafeteria felt smaller. The air felt thicker, like the building had learned something, and we had too. Tyler pressed paper towels to his nose until the bleeding slowed. He kept sniffing and wincing, eyes glossy with pain and rage. Nina tried to get Mia to drink water, but Mia kept flinching like the bottle was something dangerous. Mr. Haskins made us all check each other. Hands out, sleeves up, look for wet spots, dark marks, anything that wasn't ours. It felt humiliating and necessary. Mia's shoulder spot was darker now, and it looked less like a wet stain and more like bruised tissue under fabric. She kept pulling away whenever anyone looked too long. Eli had no marks. Tyler had none. Nina had none. Mr. Haskins had none. I didn't either. That didn't comfort me. It just meant the danger wasn't as simple as a mark. We spent the rest of day 4 in a new kind of quiet. Not the expensive quiet from earlier. This was broken quiet. The kind where any sound feels like betrayal. The building kept changing anyway. By late afternoon, the wet smell had spread beyond the kitchen. The cafeteria walls near the floor looked damp, paint slightly glossy. The seam where wall met floor had started to bulge in places, like something underneath was pushing up, trying to surface. Tyler noticed first. He pointed with a trembling finger. That wasn't there. A strip of pale tissue had appeared along the baseboard near the trophy case, thin as a ribbon at first. It clung to the wall in a way that looked organic, not stuck on. It had a faint pattern in it, like fibers woven under skin. Mr. Haskins didn't approach. He kept distance like it might lash out. "It's spreading," Nina whispered. Eli, sitting with his back to a table leg, said, "It's building." Mr. Haskins looked at him. "Building what?"
Eli's mouth twitched. A place to stand. Mr. Haskins didn't answer that because that wasn't an answer that didn't sound insane. We tried to sleep in shifts again, but after Mason and Jaden, nobody wanted to close their eyes. It felt like giving up control, like letting something slip a hand under your chin. I took a half sleep, head down, listening with one ear, and woke to Tyler nudging my shoe. "Ben," he whispered. "Look. Don't look up, just look." My eyes slid toward where he was pointing, low. The tissue strip by the trophy case had grown into a patch the size of a dinner tray. It wasn't just on the wall anymore. It had climbed onto the floor, thin film spreading like spilled egg white. It glistened in the dim, faintly pulsing. I swallowed. My throat tasted like metal again. Mr. Haskins woke too, like he'd sensed the change. He sat up and stared at it. "Okay," he whispered, to himself more than us. "Okay." Nina's voice was tiny. "What do we do if it reaches us?" Mr. Haskins didn't lie. "We move." Tyler's face tightened. "Where? The whole building is like this now." Mr. Haskins looked toward the kitchen service hall, then toward the stage, then toward the papered windows. "We find a place that hasn't softened yet," he said. Eli's voice came through, quiet and steady. "There won't be one." Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.